Hi, folks. Welcome back. So today I'm really excited to welcome a guest to the channel. My guest today is Joanne Skiles, who is an independent advisor, author, YouTuber, and she's been working in tech and cloud and software and AI for a long time and has been putting out a lot of great content on the YouTube channel, on the website, and so on. So I'm really thrilled to have you, and thank you so much for joining, Joanne.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be here as well.
All right, fantastic. So, yeah, we want to chat about a lot of things, but to start with, maybe can you just give us a brief overview of your career trajectory, what you did, how you got to where you are now, and then maybe what you're doing now, what you're most excited about currently.
Yeah. Brief is tough, but we're going to do it. We'll give it a try. For so I have been a software engineer for about 16-ish years, 16 plus, depending on how you choose to count it. And I also have a PhD in computer science, which I did in the beginning of my years. I actually worked full time while getting my PhD. I don't recommend that to anybody, not even my enemy, but I did it because I'm intense that way. I started off in defense. I worked in several different industries from defense to entertainment to then where I settled in was more health tech. My last half a decade was health tech AI. And with all that, I've gotten to the point now, increasing responsibilities, going up to becoming a director of engineering. And then finally, I kind of looked at what everything that I've done. And during all that, I made lots of YouTube videos, tutorial content. I was an AWS community builder as well. So I made a lot of, just went and talked at AWS re:Event and LA summits and DC summits. And I finally said that I wanted to do the teaching part more full time instead of instead of the engineering part. So I closed the chapter back in May, and now I am an independent advisor advising a few startups. And in the fall, I will be a professor at a local college in Orlando. And that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, it's great. Let's talk a little bit about that leap to going independent. It's something I myself am navigating, so really curious to see how other folks are doing it too. So can you talk a little bit about like what was your motivation, the like kind of nudge that
It,
finally made you decide to go independent? How has that transition been like? Um,
yeah, I think that I think I was more forced into independent is the way to say it, and maybe not forced as a negative side, is that I constantly had people pinging me within the last few years to help them out with a startup, to advise them on this, or could you spend at least a week with us and tell us where it's not working for our model. And those became more and more common engagements that it started infringing on my work. Right? And it's like, do I fly to San Francisco to help out someone for a week and take off PTO? What am I doing? What is what's the reality here? And so it became kind of that natural transition that this was a lot more exciting. And as much as I love my teams and everything that I was working with, it just was like, okay, this is really exciting. This is where my next step is. But the only way to get there was by doing the time, I guess. There's no, I guess, quick step to getting there. It was doing the time and spending all the years in AI companies to get to the point where now people say, hey, could you help us? So that's kind of where it landed. It was a very natural transition. I didn't go looking for it. If I decided to go looking for it, I would have been there sooner. It's
right, right. That's great. The customers are it out of you essentially. So that's a great place to be. Um, so you are really teaching, it comes through in the kinds of videos, articles you write. I really wish, more people did that, especially folks with kind of the knowledge and seniority you have. But it's still very rare to see. So maybe talk a little bit about like where that comes from, why you're interested in teaching. Is it just something innate, or a lot of people think that, the barrier to putting out articles or videos is too high, and they have all this cool wisdom in their head, but you never get to see it. Um, so how did you get into that?
Yeah, I know this is going to sound weird. I had really horrible professors. I had really bad professors. Don't hopefully they're not listening. And it was a challenge learning computer science. Like at the university, my undergrad, it was kind of a challenge. I had one really good professor, and the rest were very just. I would have to make jokes. They like one said, "Men wear pants, women wear skirts," and somehow that had to deal with pipelines. So for a lot of my undergrad, it was either relying on this one professor or figuring it out myself. And I still kept going, getting my master's in computer science and then my PhD. And I kind of had this idea that is why do we deal with the fact that we have people who can't teach? Like it's because they want to research and so they don't care about teaching really, honestly. But I guess that was my calling. It was I'll make videos that explain computer science concepts at that time in the very beginning. And you'll go back and if you look at my first YouTube videos, they're like intro to Java. Just here is what it is. Explain it. And if it's bad, it's still going to be better than I can't say his name. Still be better than the professor who taught me Java. We'll say it that way. And that was kind of my motivator was like if someone else has to be sitting through the same situation that I was sitting in, and wouldn't it be better that there was something free to learn instead of having to go out and buy things and find it out on YouTube? YouTube, it's free. Just sit through an ad. So that really was my motivator for why I made started off doing articles and videos and everything. And the idea is that it doesn't need to be good. It just needs to help one person, right? So sometimes I make niche things because someone left a comment and was like, "How do I do this with the simulations that I do with vehicle ad hoc networks?" Which I never really talk about. They're like, "How do I create a project this way?" I'm like, "You know what? I'll make a video. It'll help two people, but you know what? Those two people needed it." And that's kind of my motivator. And instead of worrying about making it perfect.
Yeah, percent could not agree more. And you said something over there that's a bit of a pet peeve of mine. So maybe if we can take like a tangent for a little bit. So teaching computer science, you're right. Very few people do it really well. And one thing I've noticed lately is that, especially with AI and LLMs being so good at coding, and this was true a couple of years ago already. I was making some videos about it back then. The thing is, the way we teach, especially the intro courses, CS 101, 102, and the ways in which we teach a programming language in those courses with syntax and these kind of simple 101 level problems, that has just been completely upended by LLMs. And I think we really need to rethink the way we teach CS, like from the ground up, especially now teaching a 101 course the way we still teach it seems completely nonsensical to me at least. And yeah, I talked to a bunch of CS professors on a fairly regular basis, and I'm sorry to say, I think they all have their heads in the sand. They're just not like feeling the urgency to revamp the curriculum for this new world. So I totally hear you when you say that. Um, what are your thoughts on, with the way LLMs have changed programming, how do you think we should even go about teaching CS and programming now?
Yeah, I mean that actually gets into why I decided to go back into being a professor and everything, because I think the problem is a lot more exciting now than it was pre have cheap AI. I'll call it pre cheap AI in that case. I mean, it was there, it just wasn't as cheap it is now. And I think that's what's going to be really exciting. Is part of it is we're going to have to be willing to make mistakes in the classroom and teach and kind of see what the reactions are coming back from the students in order to know what works. But it's been dead for a while as the world of lecture. The world of reading slides and lecturing is dead, and it has been dead. And the professors that still want to use their slides from the 80s, they're not, that's been dead. And it's going to be even worse now with, LLMs and everything. You can teach. What do you need to learn from a slide deck that Claude couldn't outprint to you, right? Like, he could, I mean, you can use it to, actually, I was playing around with it to explain a networking course that I'm going to be teaching in the fall. I'm like, it could be a nice outline for it. And it gives you everything. I'm like, wow, what do I even need to teach the course for, right? What do I need to do? I need to give hands on experiences. And that's going to be more important than a slide. And I think that's where the classroom is going. It's like hands on, practical experience that can stick so that when, because it's not an if, it's when you use AI to solve a problem, you can at least do a smell test and know roughly right. Or, oh my God, that's completely wrong and it's a hallucination. Because how do I know? I know because of 16 years of being a full stack developer. When it outputs garbage, it's garbage. So we're going to have to be able to teach that knowledge and give practical hands-on experience. At least that's where I think it is.
Could not agree more. And it's unfortunate. A lot of people in education, they think of AI as the enemy in that, it's letting them cheat. And I see a lot of discourse in education circles where it's overly or completely focused on how to avoid cheating and not at all focused on, look, this is a cool new tool. How should we be using this to enhance the entire pedagogical experience?
Right. And I think, and it's something that actually is my pet peeve, where it's always been, how do we stop them from cheating? And I'm like, how do you know that someone's actually learned? Isn't that what we are really supposed to be gathering is, did you learn something? Someone can sit down. I did it. I sat down in front of my chemistry test and I can't tell you anything about chemistry, but I memorized everything and I got an A in that class. So, but I didn't learn anything. That's so how do you measure learning? Learning's always been the harder thing to measure. AI is just making the job harder to know, okay, did you really learn? Or are you using a tool to make it look like you did? And that's always been the problem, is just been ignored. And I think that's where my pet peeve is. Like, it wasn't the point of us saying, here you go, consume. We need to know, did you get anything out of this? And that's a harder measurement. And I mean, that's the part that I actually care about. Otherwise, go to college. Go to college and get a degree if you're not going to learn anything out of it and you just want a piece of paper.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It has to be something more than a credential or grade maxing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. So maybe switching gears a little bit, uh, let's talk about some of the recurring topics you've been elucidating in your videos and your articles. And you talk a lot about how to build good software, how to build teams, how to have effective teams. And I particularly found your recent coverage on AI agent topics very refreshing because they cover this very underappreciated point, which is that yes, AI agents let you do new things, but they're still software and you've got to build and deploy and maintain them just like software, like old-fashioned software. And that is a point many people seem to forget, right? They think agents are some like new kind of thing. You don't need to treat them like software anymore. So how did you how did you come to that topic? What did you see and like what are you seeing the people you're working with or in companies out there? How is it going?
Yeah, I kind of came to that because a lot of groups that I do end up helping, they never really need help with the model. They don't really need help with the model or building, the speech to text engine that's going on with it. What ends up failing is everything after that when you try to go and put it into prod and suddenly all the alarms are going off and they find out that, only 10 radiologists on the system, I might be hinting at something that I worked in, brought all production down and it's only 10 people. That's really because, okay, you're really good at the AI part, but then you kind of forgot that, hey, this is a serverless system and you didn't design for it to scale. So, like, that's where, like, I just see that as the failures that happen in production. Not so much did you evaluate the model correctly, but did you actually build something that could handle more than one user in it? Because it demoed well and someone said ship it and then they shipped it as is, which has been an age old problem. Actually, really, the biggest problem that I'm sure for you as well is that we've seen throughout our careers is just how do you actually maintain something once it's in production? And it doesn't go away just because it's AI. AI is not magic. It's still really technically a distributed system. Just wearing a chatbot costume. That's what it is. So you need to understand how distributed systems work. How do you do AWS terms handle a Lambda function correctly with timeouts and the fact that you can't, you know, have WebSockets easily? Like how do you build all these things? And that knowledge is still super important and cannot be ignored. So I've seen it from mistakes, and that's what kind of inspired me to be like, okay, I get it. AI is really cool, but here's all the problems that we have, and we still need to build something correctly. And the fundamentals that have existed in full stack engineering still exist today, and you cannot ignore it.
Yeah, exactly. And that seems like such an obvious point, but we keep seem to forgetting it, which is, yeah, it's the fundamentals of software 101. How do you deploy it? How do you maintain it? How do you set off pager alarms and playbooks and all that stuff? Yeah, it might be calling an LLM, but it's still code.
Yes. And then with that, because an LLM is non-deterministic, so that for those listening, that means that it's going to give you this a different answer every time you ask it. How do you handle the fact that it's going to give you a different answer every single time? You need to have guardrails and ways to check the output of your LLM just as much as the input coming in. And so actually, now your life has gotten even more difficult because you have to validate the response because even though you told it, always write valid JSON, it goes, but I don't always need to write valid JSON.
Right, right. So maybe if we were to tease that apart a little bit, if you're trying to scale an agentic system, like you're saying, a lot of the challenges in deploying and scaling an agentic system are the things we've been doing all along with distributed systems and cloud systems. But are you also seeing new issues that are unique to these agentic systems?
The unique part, at least that I'm seeing, is it still kind of goes back to distributed systems, but it's assuming like the LLM itself makes decisions. So I've seen unique problems where people say, I'll let the LLM decide what to do next. So they let the agent decide what to do next. Then they create infinite loops within their agent. They let the agent create an answer, and then there's no guardrails to check if it's correct. So then suddenly Someone's getting a refund for something they shouldn't get a refund for. So that's the guardrails and the checks that need to exist for the agent itself. That's kind of that unique point that is existing, and then what is affected downstream from the agent decisions. But I still would say that even though you can look at that as just a different flavor of what, if you had a serverless function and you let it scale infinitely and then you destroyed your database downstream. So it's still kind of the same flavor. It's just now you have to deal with this agent that does not always give you the same answer.
Yeah, you've gotta have control over the system as a whole. I think what you're saying. And I feel like a lot of the discourse around harness engineering tries to get at that, such that, yeah, you're making LLM calls, but it's up to like all the code you put around it to kind of prevent some of these things that you
Yes.
just mentioned.
And then how much of it really needs to be an LLM. We were kind of talking pre-show is like there's a lot of things that people go, "Oh, I'll just have the agent do this." And I'm like, "Well, couldn't you just write just a random number generator for that? Like why does it need to be an agent that's doing it?" There's a lot of like trying to make something fit an AI problem when it's not. So you don't need to make your agent do every single thing. You can have individual functions that do more deterministic code. So breaking up your work, just like again going back to I guess really now getting into object oriented programming in a way is like well, does it really need to be all one giant class? Let's break it up. Does it really need to be all one giant agent? So
So- And, related to guardrails and control, I really loved this term you coined, maybe in one of your videos articles, accountability debt. And I think a few other people have referred to things that are similar but not quite the same. People are talking about things like cognitive debt and understanding debt. But I think accountability debt is getting at a slightly different concept. So talk about how you even came to the idea and like what it means, how it's different from all these other kinds of essentially flavors of tech debt that people are talking about. Because yeah, I think you're on to something really important.
so I had a co-founder that opened up a PR that was at the time when he opened it 40K lines, hundreds of files changed. This is a co-founder that has no technical background, and that's the world that we're in right now, that AI gives the ability for your product manager or your CFO or someone to vibe code a solution. And then at this point, this is the person who is the owner of the company tossing it over the fence to engineers telling them to review it. The owner of the company is not the person who's going to deal with the fact that the system is broken. All right. So he doesn't have to deal with that. He's not going to be on call. He doesn't have to answer anything. So he opens up a PR and goes, well, Codex says it works and all the tests pass. And so merge it in. Why are you guys not merging in it? And that's what I call accountability debt. Like, I am going to generate this code, but it's not going to be my problem because I'm not the person who has to deal with the alarm that goes off at 2 in the morning because of this. And so, I mean, cognitive load and all that. Similarly, it's just that when we say that now anybody can code because it's not how good you are at coding, but how well you prompt. But you're not the person who has to deal with the fact that Kubernetes instance gets overloaded. And now when we try it, actually, in this case, a database connections got filled and then the database got locked up and everything that comes back to it. I'm like, you're not the person who had to trace through all that to figure out what was going on. That was my engineers that were on call because, I mean, at the point, I was a director. I also get on the calls, but I'm also not someone who's on call. So if I go and vibe something as well, I'm just telling my engineers, this is your problem. You deal with my shitty code. So that's accountability. That is a mean way of saying it there. It's going to be more and more common. The co founder signs the checks, right? So, how much can you actually push against it? How much can you actually push against the person who owns the company and you say, no, you cannot merge that in? And he goes, okay, cool. You don't work here anymore. I mean,
Right. And maybe that's kind of an extreme example because it
yes.
was the co-founder and owner. But I do agree because that is going to happen more and more. Because one of the things these coding agents have done is quote unquote democratized the act of sending a PR. Um, so it's not just SWEs, you have PMs and UX folks sending out PRs as well. And I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. On the one hand, I think it's a good thing that my UX and product partners are empowered in that way. But on the other hand, just like you were saying,
I
they're
think
not
it's
carrying the pages, right?
right.
So I'm a bit torn on that.
And that's, I think it's good. It's just remembering that we do have, I mean, I know some people look at us engineers and they go, oh my God, you guys are such angry cats. But we have these rules for a reason. We say have small PRs. It's not just because we don't want to read. I mean, I don't want to read, but the point is we have a small PR because now we've made blast radius smaller, right? So it's understanding, hey, it's trying to make sure that we explain to our PMs or UI UX group. It's like, yes, you can put in a PR, but for one thing, for 20 things, though that's 20 PRs. And I know it seems inefficient, but this is where we're at right now. And it becomes really important. Like we talk about this, but in the world that I've lived a lot of my life in for work is been extremely regulated environments. And that means CI/CD in the world of I push something and it goes to production didn't really exist because you can't do that to like it's like telling someone, hey, whatever software you're using on your machine right now, it's just going to immediately update it every single time. Customers ignored our updates. My Windows machine has been yelling at me forever to update. Is one extreme side of the world. There's the side where customers are expecting complete data security and they're not going to update anything unless they go through and they test it themselves. And then you have the website world where it doesn't really matter. You ship it breaks, okay, fine, I'll just ship something else and it's fixed. So we have to understand also the boxes that we live in and that the rules and the processes for our software exist for a reason. And that's where I'm like, okay, I get it. The engineers, we have been a little bit of drama queens, but our drama was created because of trauma. So just accept it.
That's a great point. And, related to that, another great point I think you've been making is that there's some inherent irreducible complexity, and you might be able to move it around. You might be able to move where that complexity resides in the system, but you can't get rid of it. It's almost like a law of conservation of complexity.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. Well, better said than what I said, but yes.
So I think as a field, we are basically kind of making up these solutions as we go along because especially agents and building stable production agents is such a new thing. It's barely a couple of years old. I know now, like 2 years ago, seems like ancient history, but back in the before times, we used to talk in terms of 5 years, 10 years, in terms of tools or languages or libraries or techniques kind of maturing. And now it seems like if something is like 2 months old, it's like, not even relevant anymore. But in terms of stable deployments, especially for agents. Like, what are some kind of new techniques or mechanisms or libraries or tools, whatever you can think of? Like, what are some new things that you see actually helping with real world production stuff in all this new agent stuff?
I, you know, I think that's a good question because I don't think anything, I'm old school and I'm weird. Like, I don't think the new techniques, I think they're all still kind of the same techniques at the end of the day. Is, you look at the problem that you have to solve, you plan it out, you architect it out. It's just that now you're doing that with the help of AI helping you plan it out as well. You do the research that you need to do, then you build the necessary architecture, right? Maybe so much now is more that I see newish is that you don't need to have your own model. You can look at models that you have available to you. You can look at Amazon's Bedrock and see that, okay, I can choose between Nova or Cloud or something, Claude, Nova or Claude or something else between there. I don't need to make my own model. I don't need to fine tune as much. I can use knowledge bases and kind of fake a trained model without doing a trained model. So I guess paying attention to what our bigger cloud providers are using with knowledge bases might be a newer technique. But outside of that, it's making sure that you have the right bones for the system that you're doing so that when the model becomes obsolete or boring or useless because it's, 2 months old and someone says, we want Fable. Well, guess what? You just have to replace it to put in Fable, right? Right? That, I think that's why I'm saying I don't think the new techniques are there. I think it's the same exact thing. It's just making sure that you have decoupled systems so that you can easily change to the model that you need instead of having to redo your whole entire thing one more time.
Right, right.
And I mean, that might be a little bit boring, I guess, in a way. It might be a little bit boring, but that's kind of where I'm seeing is that the same problem is there. It's just, making sure that you approach it in a systematic way to know how to solve it.
Yeah, it's still like the fundamentals remain the same. And so one thing I keep seeing, and maybe this is kind of AI consultant advisor shop talk, is that very often enterprises will not know what even to build an agent for.
Yes.
And it comes down to actually understanding and articulating their workflow. And the challenge I keep seeing is that this workflow is almost always tacit knowledge, right? In most situations that you go to, people doing work, knowledge work in an office, it's not like they come into work in the morning and they crack open like a manual and follow the steps in the manual. It's all like people talking to each other and it's all tacit knowledge in their heads. So then when you go in to see, well, what can an agent do? The very first problem you run into is one of articulation. Well, tell me what you're doing, like what your workflow is, and then maybe we can figure out which parts of it an agent could help with. Are you seeing something similar? How do you deal with that?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Like the biggest thing that I usually is like, what have you done for discovery? What have you guys actually mapped out and planned? And most of the time, there is nothing. So it's a lot of investigation, a lot of just sitting down and interviewing people and asking, so what do you do? I feel like I'm like in the office space, like, you know, describe what you do here. What do you do here? And it's very weird, but I mean, that's kind of what it is because they're like, I feel like AI can solve a problem here, but there's nothing documented. So I 100% with you. Like that is the biggest thing is that discovery is always missing.
Yeah, and
I don't know.
often that is so hard. I think this whole blow up in the idea of having forward deployed engineers is essentially someone sitting next to you, either physically or virtually, and shadowing you to understand what you're doing.
Yes.
That's like maybe 80% of what an FD should actually be doing.
Yes. But definitely I've seen that as like the forward deploy engineer, really, because I'm going to sit there, do the discovery, do that work to help figure out how to build that agentic system for you. But, and I've said this on one of my episodes for chaotic commits, is when that forward deploy engineer leaves, is your team going to be able to support what they built? And so definitely, yes, their job is that, but they also need to be making sure that they set the company up for success. And a lot of my engagement with forward deploy engineers, and I have been a contractor, which is kind of the mercenary thing, is that's not really ever been the most important part of the job because you want to renew your contract.
Right, makes sense. So I wanted to pivot a little bit from kind of enterprise and corporate and all this stuff to more of a personal tech stack conversation. And I'm like super nosy because I pretty much these days spend my entire day talking to agents in one way or the other. And it's kind of completely changed how I even just interact with my computer and do my day-to-day work. So I like to ask people, like, what is your agent or AI stack? What do you use it for, like in your own work, maybe personal or professional? And what are your like little tips and tricks and configs or skills, all that nerdy stuff?
Yeah. I think I'm a pretty I think I'm pretty simple in some ways. I use a lot of Claude code, mostly in the case for a lot of debugging aspects. I think they're really good if I give it like a dump of cloud logs. It's just like it will help me. It'll get it wrong, but it will get me in the right area, and that's all that I want at that point. So I use Claude code. I use Claude as well for a little bit of, I guess, copy editing. ChatGPT is more of the copy editing. I like how it understands my natural language more. So when I throw something more in there, it sounds more like Joanne, whereas Claude doesn't. Claude wants me to always say genuinely, and I hate that word. Those are my main guys. Guys, I like it. They're both men in my head. That's weird, but that's where it's at. Those are my main ones. I would have to say, other than that, anything else that I do is purely because I like breaking stuff. So maybe I'll go into perplexity, do certain things, but that's more because I've started here and then I need to fact check it. So I basically use all the other AI tools to fact check what I've started with. And so that's my main point. I actually have a little side thing where I write a little bit of short story fictions and I don't let AI touch any of it. So I have a very specific little short story fiction that is 100% like no AI goes near you. And that's to make sure that my writing
Right.
skill stays good.
That makes a lot of sense. It reminds me of this funny quote. You might have seen it. I wanted the machines to do my laundry and dishes so that I could do art and write poems.
Yes.
And now it's the other way around.
I think that's very true. I'm like, I think about it and I'm like, yeah, I don't want you to write stories for me. I don't want you to do any of that. Like, can you, can you, can you vacuum the house? How about that?
So, do you have a model of choice? Any favorites or regulars?
Ah, I think I change it basically based on what I need to be doing. If I want it super deep, then I'm going up higher to like a, I guess, a more complex. I guess my default is Sonnet. Sonnet's like 4.6 is my default because for the most part I don't need anything. And then when I say I need to burn all my tokens, then I'll jump it up. And I guess I have a rule of thumb, and actually I've been asked this before, is like, how do you decide what model to use? And I'm like, well, I always start with the cheapest. And if it doesn't do what I want it to do, then I start bumping up. So
Right,
that's
right.
kind of my rule of thumb. I'm a very, maybe because I'm spending my money, that I'm like, I gotta start cheap and then I start bumping up. And that's kind of where I stand. So I wouldn't say I have a favorite model. I have a default and then I
Yeah.
bump.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wonder if you've managed to get a lot of new solutions out of the tippy top models like Fable. So, like for
I
me, what
honestly
happened
was
was,
very, I was disappointed in Fable, but it did burn through my tokens. I'll give it that.
yeah, I am kind of like an AI maxi,
Mhm.
but maybe it's a failure of imagination on my part. I'm having a very difficult time coming up with problems that are challenging enough that Fable can help me with them. Now, there have been one or two problems where I could clearly see a step up in the kind of solution that Fable gave me versus the next rung. And the next rung is Opus and
Right.
Soul, right? Opus 4.8, Soul 5.6. But it happened very rarely. It happens maybe once every week or so where I push up against the limits of these, like, second tier. It seems funny to call them second tier. And then I think, okay, maybe this is where I need to use Fable. But
I
yeah,
agree.
it's very
It was
rare.
very validating, honestly. I would have to say this is very validating because this is what I see as well. Like, and maybe I'm the same way. Like, I haven't found something that I go, okay, this was totally what Fable was meant to do. You said, like, I can land at our second tier models and be like, you know what, this is what I need. And for the most part, I tend to break down a lot of the work that I'm doing before I hand it over. And I think that might be part of it is that I do break it down to be very compartmentalized because I like to see what's getting done. I don't like a black box. All my research will be into transparent systems. And so kind of am that way. I want to see what's going on. So I'm not going to just let something run for a whole day and then find out what happened. But, and so part of it might be just how I prompt. It's not really ever going to need that top tier model.
Right. What is the kind of coolest personal use case you've cracked with an agent or a model?
The okay, so okay, I'll go with the coolest that people think is really cool is that I did an entire RPG kind of teaching how to use AI agents. It's called Neon Scratch Lounge, and it's a cat dystopian based future. And that was, I think, really cool. And I felt that one trying to tell like that one I actually part of my pride was I didn't write I wouldn't say I didn't like write a single line of code because I definitely wrote code, but most of it was written using me prompting Claude and was really getting it to think I want you to make sure that you make everything visible and transparent. Personally, what I'm working on right now is a task managing tool, and I'll have it probably in the next few months. It will be available for those. I'm very much for you own your own instance of code, you own your own cloud, you own the application. So I'm making an Android app called Open Loop, which helps schedule your tasks, your, you know, email management, everything like that, but it lives within your own AWS instance. Your data stays with you, so it doesn't go to anybody else. So that is my personal tool that I think I'm really excited about, and I think it's shaping up to be really well. And I can't wait to like give it to people to be like, here you go, now you can install this, and it's just going to be a shell on the Android App Store that you can use and then put in your connection strings. And congratulations, it's 100% yours. No one looks at it. Your data's not being sold to anybody.
Very cool. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Switching gears a little bit, I noticed you do a lot of event organization and community in your Orlando area. And I love going to events selfishly simply because, working by yourself in a co-working space gets lonely. So I try to make an effort to go out to events and meet people. And I've recently started organizing some as well, though I'm very much a newbie at it. Any tips, tricks, advice for people who are trying to build a local IRL community?
I will say this. I am, despite how I come off, I am I am not an extrovert. And so it actually is very hard for me to go out and like talk to people. So I would say if you want, that would be step one is to go out there, go to other meetups. So I run the Orlando AWS user group, but I'm also the vice president for Orlando Devs, which is tech, like a big group of meetups within Orlando that we do Java meetups, Python, full stack engineering. There's a junior engineering group as well. So we have a bunch of different groups. Along with that, I also go out to women in tech groups that I do not run, and I just meet up with others. And I would say be a participant first. Be a participant at another meetup. See how it goes. I think the hardest part that I had was actually finding a venue, like a place to host the event. And then once you do that, people do come. Put yourself out there. Basically, you have to be comfortable putting yourself out there. And don't worry too much about it. I would think back on it as my first meetup that I did was horrible. But people kept coming. So like it works out. Like you will learn and you'll get better from it is what I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think your point about logistics is so true. Often just getting the venue and ordering the food, it's just a lot of work. It doesn't sound like it, but so I have a
Oh yeah,
newfound appreciation for people that organize events.
I'll say this much is that the world is you never the Pizza Hut that's near me knows me. They know that like they're like, "Oh man, as soon as I saw 15 large pizzas, I knew it was going to be you."
Right.
Like
All right, fantastic. Joanne, thank you so much for your time. It's been a scintillating conversation. Where can people find you online? Any parting messages? Anything exciting that's coming up for you?
yeah. So you guys, people can find me either if you're interested in technical tutorials. I have my Dr. Joanne Skiles YouTube channel that goes through different computer science, AWS fundamentals, and then occasionally some of my research. Then I also have a podcast for Chaotic Commits, which is a solo podcast, and also a Woman in Tech podcast with a co-host called Her Career Unplugged. You can also read my Substack, which is technical musings. Today I posted a rant about Pokemon Go, so if you feel interested in that, you can read it. And then of course my LinkedIn as well as Joanne Skiles. If you drop a message, I will accept the connection. As
Fantastic.
for as for excitement, I'm getting ready for the fall semester, so we will find out whether or not I survive college with Gen AI, right?
Right. Would love to loop back and hear how that went. Thank you so much again for your time. It was great chatting and all the best.
Yes, thank you.